All right, what's up? We are talking about developing athletes age 10 or 12 and under, specifically 10 to 12 and 9 and under. Um, Not that I don't have experience in other areas, but I do have a lot of experience in this particular area because it's the lifeblood of your team, of your organization, of what you're doing. And if you're going to have fast teenagers, you ideally want to have all the variables in place and all the boxes checked so that when they hit that those teenager years, and specifically high school, that they are ready to rock, right? And fully optimize every movement of every stroke of every yard that they're taking in practice to be the best they can be. So I have some notes over here, so I didn't write them down today. It was too many to write down. So we're going to kind of walk or begin going through this. Let's see. So I have 6 variables that we're trying to, or 6 initial variables, right, that we're trying to get under control when we're developing these athletes, right? So the first one is how we can organize and optimize our training around their motor skill and movement limitations and their ability, right? Little kids are a lot more flexible, so they're going to be able to get in positions, and let's see, that an adult would not, right? So for butterfly, right, like it's this, I have some limitation. I can probably get up a lot higher than most people because I've trained my body to do it. But, a little kid, like they're going to have flexibility to bend their shoulders in places that, the average person cannot. So we can kind of take advantage of that and build strength in those positions by coaching them. So that way they maintain their flexibility as they age. It's also when athletes are able to, they're the most supple is what it's called. And we're going to go over where I've got that term from. I believe it's called like the 6 S's or something. We're going to get into where that came from also, but 6 S's. We also have, their fine motor skills, which is, very short stop and goes. They're kind of going to overshoot. They do not have great, if any, fine motor skill tuning at all. Fine-tuned motor skill. That's what the term is. All right. Now, the second thing we want multi-sport athletic development. Ideally, we want them in other sports, playing other sports, ideally at a high level, not just riding the pine. And the reason why this became an important feature that we needed to take care of or address when developing the kids is when I was a youngster, right? We didn't have the internet the way it was, but we did play outside all the time, right? And I think in my own particular case, like we had neighborhood races where we would, my house was kind of in like a loop that came, like it was Still Meadow Street. For those of you who are in Round Rock, Oak Bluff, shout out, Forest Creek. There's the main street that runs up through the neighborhood that I lived in, or division, whatever you want to call it. And there's a loop that runs from here, and it comes out and it runs all the way up here. And then on the other side of the street, there's the same loop that's even with my street. And where mine would end up here, this one would like end in the middle, right? And then you'd have the street and they connect. And then up here, this one would, once you looped and went up and connected, it connected to a whole other part of the neighborhood. So we would make that little, what would be a lap, I guess kind of like a weird B. We would make that into like our track. And we would have neighborhood races. We'd have 8 kids on a team. One person does a bike relay. One person does a skateboard, running. Like we were doing that. Field hockey, or not field hockey, roller hockey, skateboarding, rollerblading, touch football on the pavement, the asphalt, basketball. We were doing everything outside, right? Climbing trees, jumping from trees onto the ground, 10 feet in the air, just doing dumb stuff, right? Being kids. And, playing every sport under the sun when we, go in, with our families and go do practices. So I think that, the kids of my generation, we were much stronger bodied athletes at relative ages. And because of that, you did not need great technique, right? Because maybe we were only getting 40% of the conversion of our effort into speed. But because our strength was 100 versus the kids now whose strength is 40, right? If you're getting 100 or 40, you're getting a 40. But if you get 100 or 40% of 100, you still get 40, right? So we were a lot stronger, and that made up for a lot of bad techniques. So we want to make sure that we're getting that multi-sport development, or at least faking it, right? Which we'll talk about how to use dryland to supplement that. Training, I'm not, like I said, I like multi-sport participation. So, an hour practice a day, 3 days a week. I think we had for some of them, some kids that were only going 2 days a week, the really beginner kids. And then, 5 hours, an hour a day, without dryland. I'd probably go an hour and 15, but we're not going to talk about that. Just say an hour a day, 30 minutes to 40 minutes of dryland 3 times a week, right? And this is the 10 to 12 age group kids who are going 5 days a week for an hour, 3 days a week for an hour, your 9 and unders, and then probably your beginner kids are 2 days a week for an hour, and that's like, let's just say 7 and under, right? Our path to maximize talent. So technique needs to meet the training needs of each age group through efficiency, right? So if you think about it as a variable, propulsive skills are going to be added secondarily. As a variable, we want to max each thing, right? So the athlete is not going to necessarily approve, especially with that 9 and under, 3 days a week practice group, through yards. It's going to be through moving through the water more efficiently. It's going to be through whatever strength gains they gain from playing other sports, right? And then we are trying to maximize, and this is where the technique, right, where we're talking about, we want to maximize each movement of the body to access their strength they're developing athletically by playing other sports, to maximize the return on training per movement, per stroke, per yard, right? So no stroke, no movement, no yard is left untapped. And this is where I say the thing about, these weaker kids at 40%, the techniques allowing them to get 100% of their 40 strength, 100% of that 40 strength, versus when I grew up, we were maybe 100 strength, but we're only getting 40% of that 100 and still getting 40, right? So we want to make sure that what we are teaching is going to maximize their gains, right? Now, if we can get them up to that 100 like we did back when I was a kid, we're going to get 100% of that 100. But yeah, we want to make sure we're maximizing that return. Input, whatever this variable is that fractions off or whatever, the output, we want to make sure that the input going in, converts into, improvement, swimming faster, as cleanly as possible. And then one of these specific, and by doing this, we're going to maximize our yardage increases when we are beginning to add the endurance training components, because now that we've maximized every stroke, maybe, as a little kid, because they're doing 500 yards compared to when I was a kid doing 500 yards, I'm only going to get 40% of that gain, right? Whereas these 40 strength kids, because they're maximizing their stroke, they're going to get the full 500, right? Or I think a better way that I try to think about it is as a stopgap, because they're getting the full muscular benefit of good technique. Their 500 yards is now actually worth 1,000 yards, whereas we would have to do 1,000 to get the same benefit, because we're getting a fraction less. So we have to make up for that in terms of more yards. And I found this to be the case. So specifically, and this is why I say this stuff, when I learned the power stuff I learned from David Marsh, when I put on some paddles to try and exacerbate the feedback loop, because my muscles are gonna have to work harder, and I couldn't go like a 25 pull all out with the paddles on at tempo, pulling as hard as I could, right? My muscle, literally, it felt like I was lifting weights in the water. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying use the technique to access strength, right? So and my heart rate was not up at all. My muscles were just gone. They were gassed, right? So then it was kind of like a eye-opening experience where it's like, oh man, I've been training this way, the wrong way my whole life, right? My muscles couldn't even do a 25. And at this point, I'm 23, right? I've won my 4 NCAA titles. I'm 3 individual, 1 team. I am past being 38th in the world. I went to SwimMac, trained with, Ryan Lochte, Tyler Clary, David Marsh tried to teach me this stuff at the time. I didn't get it. Ariana Vanderpool Wallace, Madison Kennedy, right? I went and trained with these people, learned Colin Jones and learned from them. And now I'm, back, and it's like, oh man, like if I had known this when I was there, like I would have became him. I would have been him. But it was like, okay, I know that most swimmers do not know this. So we're going to leverage this advantage as hard as we can for us. So, and this is where the technique comes, right? So I know, and this is why I say like getting 100% out of that 40 versus 40% out of 100 strength. Like if we can do this, that is going to be what happens. We're going to have a 500-yard practice be a value of 1,000 because we are going to be actually training our muscles, right? And if we have the dry land strength to go along with that, the multi-sport strength to go along with that, we're going to be killing it. All right, so now we're going to start getting into the different research I did. Let me see. I got to figure out how to pull this up. Excuse me. All right, so we're going to go through my research, and then we might look at my version of it. So after, like I said, I do everything to win. I'm not out here lying on the internet. All right, so if you can see, this is the American Development Model. I don't know if you can see this up at the top. And they basically tell you everything you should be teaching your kids, right? So this is, I believe, level 1, a 300-yard set, a freestyle and backstroke. So these are your like beginners. Right now, coincidentally, this coincides kind of almost exactly with the Canadian development model, which we're also going to look at. But, right, they tell you everything about discipline, nutrition, dry land, competitive performance, introduction to racing skills, right? Oh, it's only one? Okay, that's why it was like this. Oh, wait, why did it do that? It wasn't just one. That's weird. All right, so level 2. All right, so this is where we start getting into, these will be like your beginner. So our kids who are doing 2 days a week, but they're actually able to get across the pool, right? And relatively quickly, right? So they're not maybe your 4 to 6 year olds who are like, they're moving across the pool, but it's taking some time, right? So we're going to pretty much mostly look at the sets, right? So they're doing a 12 to 15 minute 600-yard set. These are 50, so 50's on a minute. I said the last bit of coaching I did, we had 9 to 11 year olds, maybe the rare 8 and under. This is where we began when we started overhauling that group. Is they could not go a 50, a set, a 50 on a minute freestyle. Could not do it, right? So it's like, okay, we are at level 2 basically. Like if you look over here, it doesn't say anything about performance yet, right? So we can't even start training for meets, for going fast, for performance, so we're trying to get on. And like I said, in this scenario, we were trying to, we were on a little bit of a rush, which is what our next course is going to be about. It's going to be how to flip a team or 10 to 12 year olds from B swimmers to AAA swimmers in less than a year. Right. So let's see. Okay, let's go back. But anyway, so you can see the test set guidelines down here, or training guidelines. Right, so ideally, this is where you're going to have, I would say, if you think about it in 2 groups, this is where maybe your top end of your 2-day-a-week swimmers are going to be, where they're trying to get down to where they can do this. And your test set is maybe them trying to do this before you move them up. Because if they can go 10 to 15 minutes at 100 or at 50s at 100, right? At 1 minute, wow. When they move up at a bare minimum, that they are capable of an all-out effort where they can go that, right? And that's what we need to see. Like, can they all out do this for so many, right? Because at the very least, that means when they move up, they're going to be able to do that going all out, right? Now, maybe that's unfeasible, but at that current time, but when they move up, current time in their life, but when they move up in the beginning of the season, they'll be able to make the intervals as they get increasingly more difficult into the real training of the season. This is also probably going to be your bottom group of 3 days a week swimmers, right? Like kind of like I just said, they just move up. But you're still focused on drills, still focused on getting their technique right. And this is where we would have our Reykli content. All right, so let me get this open real quick. All right, so over here you can see, all right, so we're just gonna kind of look at, all right, so that group 1 up till this, what do we call it? Level 2, so this is kind of the slow end of your 3 days a week swimmers. Ooh, whatever's going on doesn't like that. All right, that's where we're going through our beginner content. Okay. So you can see over here, right? How to scull, how to do our pull, how to do our kick, making sure we're not diving down too deep. That's all the stuff we're doing, right? And, here we talk about the basic movement skills. So once they get, competent with those movement skills, you can get into your key drills, right? Which would be flutter breast, piston kick, your whatever the normal breaststroke drills, 2 kicks up, 1 down, like all the normal stuff. But the importance of this content is you're teaching them how to bend and use their joints and the specific how of the pull that they will then be applying in the flutter breasts, right? To make sure, like I said, that we are developing muscles. We are using muscles and training muscles. So that is what we are going through here. And then as we get to this, you start to see, is this group 2? No, group 4. Oh, that's what happened. It jumped stuff. Okay. So now they're there. We move them up into the top end of the 3 days of group where they're, trying to do actual sets. So maybe every once in a while you have them going into, they see 100 every once in a while, but it's mostly the 50s. And then once they have those skills down, maybe here you start introducing them to a little bit of the fundamental AA content. Right now, the piston kicking, you can see it's still there. It's the same thing, breast kick, how wire works. Piston kick, the arm, adding the freestyle catch, sprint breaststroke. You start introducing some of these concepts. So probably the kick, the piston kick, and the arms, but you're getting them ready to begin training, right? So by the time they move up to this group, we're actually chasing time standards, right? These are your 10 to 12 age group swimmers, right? You can see it right there, right? They have the intervals down here. Right? But now because they're using their muscles, they can actually train this stuff to be successful. So here is where we're going to start seeing, you, once again, like I said, you start going into the good stuff. Where we're starting to, now that their arms and everything are in places where they can create propulsion, we're going to start using muscles and training the muscles. Right, so we're adding the freestyle catch. We have the shoot. Let's add the freestyle catch. Right, L skull. Right, so you're gonna go through that drill progression, make sure they learn it, and then maybe every once in a while, as you go to meets, you see what they're doing wrong, and you come back and handle your business on that stuff. But for the most part, you're just trying to make sure they stay sharp. And as you begin to go through this process year after year, you're gonna have the majority of the group knowing what's going down. I'm going to talk about this in the flipping the group from B to AAA times in the next course we launch. But when you get to the point where the majority of your athletes know what's going on, you almost have to do no coaching, because the incoming athletes, you can delegate that to the incumbents and let them help the incoming athletes. Right. And then because of that, maybe you just got to pull out 1 or 2 or 3 newbies to show them and let them see what's going on. I've definitely had it happen to where the whole group looks wonky and you just pull them all out and have them watch the swimmer who's doing it right? Which also gives you a chance to praise somebody. I always try and look for the swimmers who aren't leading lanes who are doing things right, because it's a very empowering experience for them and gives them confidence that, hey, I'm actually good. And then you start seeing them tearing up practice, right? So a little bit of a mind game you're trying to play there, but, we're doing it to try to win. But anyway, we start to see the competitive standards pop up. And then the next level, which we have level 4, we start seeing this. Now, the benefit of when you're actually training muscles is, I can say firsthand experience in this specific, when I first started using this Reykli content for the big kids, this point right here, 11, 12 AA, 10 to 13 A times, we had kids who could not make these intervals. They could not. So we basically had a tweener group. I think we were at like 130. I think the fastest, like if we did an actual set, a test set, I think we did 10 100s. We had kids, the most they could do was 6 100s on 120. And this is them like struggling, like 119s, like push and go. Not them like making it comfortably, which, we would like to see a 110 and get 10 seconds rest, right? But they could make all 10 on like 125. But anyway, I say that to say like they could not, and that's just, 15 minutes of a set, right? At 120, maybe 14 minutes. So it's barely even what they need to do, right? And they were going AAA 10 through 12 and AA 13, 14, right? So this is why I say the thing about the muscle stuff and making sure the technique is right, because if you have that right, like the benefit, they're going to get that 100%. And this is why I say like the per yard, like they say right here, 20 to 45 minutes. So that's 3 100s is 4 minutes. So times 10, that's 3,000 yards in 40 minutes. Right? Is that right? 4 minutes times 10 is 43, 3,000. Yeah, 3,000 yards in 40 minutes. If it was just all free and they were doing this, right? So they could not do that. 3,000 yards in 40 minutes, and they're outperforming these standards, right? Which is where I then took this and kind of remixed the stuff that we were doing with the Reykli exact content. Probably not going to go over it. This is pretty, good enough. But the point I'm making is the technique content, when you have that down and you're doing it and they're actually training their muscles, and you have kids who are athletes and have strength, they don't have to be able to, you basically have both, best of both worlds. They're getting the 100% of their strength and they're strong. So they don't need as much training. Like I said, like we were, going to practice 5 days a week for an hour and going quad A times, hour and a half going quad A times, not really doing a bunch of yards because we're young, right? We couldn't do it. Relative to being an older kid, right? I'd say back then we were probably doing the acceptable amount of yards that you'd have 12 and unders doing. But when you're able to train those muscles, because they're actually training their muscles to last, right? They're going to actually gas out at a certain point and not be able to make those intervals. But they're going to also be developing, just the same way like lifting weights. They're going to be tearing on their muscles and then recovering. So they're going to get faster. On top of that, if you have a great dryland program, which we're going to get into in a little bit, you're going to be able to have them develop very, very fast. And, that's what we did. All right, so now we're going to go into the next thing, which is the long-term athlete development model, which is Swim Canada. So Swim Canada was the fastest earning international medal winning swim organization for like in the 2010s. So they weren't winning the most, but they went from like 0 to 5 to 10. Like they were increasing their medal haul internationally per year, the fastest of any swim federation in the world, right? So, and the way they did that is by focusing on developing kids over long term. So yeah, we'll take that, so we have two resources. We have intervals we know produce results, and then we have a proven way to develop athletes over the long term to make them into medal winners, right? Now, obviously, do we want to have medal winners? Yeah. But if we can just get 50% of that success, of that development on top of what we already have, boom. Now, at the time, right, I was just kind of organizing this, and then, you go out and test it. But now that I've tested it and seen the results, I can say this with confidence, like, all of these things, like we have an actual Reykli process, which will be in the course. But all of these things put together, it's like you can dominate. You can dominate, especially with the dry land. Because I'd say the last coaching stop I had, not coaching, but like a consulting / coaching, we did not have the dry land piece in place for this age group that I was working with. And with that, like it would have been a wrap. Because we had kids going A times, right? And that's with them being at the level 2 version, right? Where they're, level 2, because level 3 is hundreds on 140. we had a few athletes get to the 140, right? But then we could only go like 100 every once in a while, right? We didn't go too many in a row because they just learned, and we were flipping them. That's what I'm calling it. So when I say B to AAA in less than a year, 8 months to be exact, I'm gonna call that now flipping the group, right? So, when we're flipping the group, most of the kids in the group are still at that level 2 area, right? So we couldn't really, and we're trying to develop the group, not the outliers, right? We're a team, we're strong as our weakest link. These kids, we want them to keep staying together, long-term development, and move to the groups together. So we need to emphasize group over the individual, right? And because of their age group, we can afford to do that because they can move into the next group and then really get down and be aggressive with their training. And still have time to develop and being a great swimmer. So we weren't really sacrificing anything as far as their success. But anyway, let's get into this. So let's see, when you get to the good stuff. All right. So we're over here to implement. Oh, can I not? Okay, yeah, we can. Reliable program focused on performance, right? That's what we're after. We're trying to be fast swimmers. Deliver athletes to the national team with greater potential for improvement at an age where optimal performance is possible. So they have a targeted performance window, which is around national team. So we're thinking late teens plus. An effective development strategy will also deliver athletes with advanced abilities across all physical, blah, 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 tactical and lifestyle skill sets, right? So you're going to equip everybody with what they need, which is going to allow those who have gifts to pop, right? While it's going to make everybody competitive, it's going to really highlight those with gifts. And what I found, like I said, with our content, because the athletes who were outperforming those standards, I call the island of broken toys. They were kind of, I'm not going to say like castaways, but they were definitely not being taken care of before I took over the group. And this is back on my first club team. And they ended up outperforming the like chosen ones group, right? They ended up beating them to the point where now, I'm no longer there, but they ended up taking over and became the fastest kids on the team in the year after I left, right? And I kind of at the time knew that, the coach above me wasn't really going to keep them developed. So I kind of made it my point, like knowing this, like, okay, I need to develop these kids to such an elite level. And this is where like I push myself in, it's a lot of stressful time because they were doing everything I asked. So it's on me at this point if they fail, right? Because I'm not holding up my end of the bargain. But yeah, like a lot of the content, like the initial version came from, them being like, this is dumb. We don't want to do this. Like, let's try it this way. And then maybe, no, you're wrong. And then thinking about it and be like, okay, you're right. And changing stuff, but basically trying to find the drills to get them the knowledge and information that I knew worked that could be communicated and taught to them. And, like I said, they end up becoming the chosen ones over the previous chosen ones. Let's see, go to the next one. All right, so 10-year rule. Oh, it's not important. So to break these things down, let's see. Right, and you can pause and go back and read all this stuff, but basically it's just all the different variables that they're trying to maximize. Right, and I really love this one. Funny story, right? So my first boss, right, I took this and kind of broke it down and combined it with the technique stuff that I knew and the ADM stuff I knew. And I emailed it to him and I was like, hey, like we needed to use this stuff, right? The Swim Canada stuff. And this is after my first year on the team. So this is like halfway, like the winter of 2016. 14, 15, 15, yeah, winter of 2015 into January 2016, right? And we finally have a meeting to like go over all this with the other coach on staff. And he's like, we already do this. And I was like, that's a weird way to kind of put it. Like, there's nothing in there you saw. And it's like, I know you don't because I went and researched this because we don't use it, right? If I had researched it, it would have been very obvious and be like, oh, okay, like I see where we're wrong, right? So anyway, I'm like, I guess that slipped through already. I'm like, forget that. Like, I'm just going to start implementing this on my own, right? So in my mind, I have like all the groups like compartmentalized on what they need and I'm executing, developing. They look good. I already got to the point where like the parent, because I basically kind of had things running like a conveyor belt where the kids were like in each group were like learning and it's very organized. It was almost like melodic to watch, right? Just you see the kid drill. I'd be somewhere in the pool. And like for flip turns, right? So they do drill, get to the wall. I help them with their flip, streamline, push off, drill back, or swim back. And I remember there was a time where like I remember watching all the parents watch us in the water because like it was a beautiful thing, bro. Like that's probably one of my proudest moments as a coach. Because like, and these were, you know, the beginner kids, you know, I'd say 8 and unders maybe, and then your late start kids. So we had some 10-year-olds in the group, 3 practices a day, hour each practice. And man, they were developing, bro. I remember we had those 8 and unders like nailing flip turns, in on their back, push off, jump, twist, tight streamlines, 2 dolphin kicks, flutter, kick, splash the feet, breakout. Like it was, these kids was looking nice. Anyway, yeah, that was an awesome time. But oh yeah, the story. So we ended up going to this conference in Anaheim, and the Swim Canada guy who wrote this is there, right? And he like kind of he's giving the presentation. It's named something else at the time he's giving this presentation. I think they got rid of like long-term athlete development, and we're just calling it like athlete development or something. But it was essentially the same exact stuff I'd read of his. This stuff I'm showing you now. And I remember we get back, or maybe after the program, but somewhere, right? He's like, that was amazing. He's like, we need to use this now. And I'm just like, bro, like if he had read it, my stuff that I sent him, he would have recognized all the stuff, right? And so this is 2018. So I gave him this in 2015. So 3 years later. So I gave him it in the winter of 2015, September of 2018. He does this. And keep in mind, I came up with this entire concept in the beginning of my second year coaching. What a joke. Anyway. So, if this happens to you guys, be confident, you know, especially if you're using our stuff, like just be ready to be hated on, man, and be treated less than. But no, you got the solution and go out there and prove it. And that's what I did. Like I said, the Island of Broken Toys became the chosen ones at the end of the day. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, so these are all variables. That's the way I look at it, right? I'm looking at this mathematically. These are all variables that you're trying to maximize. I got to zoom in so you can see some of these. All right, specialization. So that's kind of getting into individual sports. Peak height velocity is puberty. Oh, come on. Trainability is when the body's ready for yards training versus speed training. So there's 2 trainability windows for speed training. One is, I think it's like 8 and under. And then the other one is on the back end of puberty. So it's like 16 plus, right? So, you know, knowing that information is important, right? Because and this is where I say the thing with like the little kids in the beginner group, like, you know, you give them a drill, but they do that drill like we're going fast. We're racing each other. We're doing games where we're trying to race and go fast with these drills, right? Take advantage of that speed window. And, you know, since you're just doing 25s with a lot of rest, like you don't need to do yards, right? You just need them to learn the basics and go fast. Sorry, my feet are itching bad. So if you hear some like weird scratching, it's me using the chair leg. I have like one of those rolly chairs, like the 5-star things. I'm like using those. I don't know why I just said all that. Sorry, guys. But yeah, you can see all the details. Let's see. Then they go into, okay, what's at the top? Okay, we don't need that. The actual developmental pieces, right? So understanding growth and development. So when to do what as far as their training. It says, yeah, right here, prior to the growth spurt, peak height velocity, age 12 and a half for females and 14 for males. If you go look at the time standards charts for USA Swimming, you will see that, you know, boys are always growing just because of puberty or testosterone, although they don't have the, you know, the huge growth spurt until age 14. But because of girls, when they hit theirs, you can observe that the time standards between boys and girls are about the same times through age 12, because they're getting their peak testosterone at the time where boys aren't, but they're just developing physically as boys. So they're able to keep pace until boys hit theirs and, you know, pop off. You know, when there should be doing anaerobic training. I believe over here is where it says the thing about the young kids too. No, it doesn't say it here. It's somewhere else. It's in the speed window. So that'll be with the S's. Okay, so yeah, that'll be with the S's. Speed. Anaerobic, aerobic capacity, girls 11 to 13, 12 to 14 for males, right? So this is why I'm saying, like, you want to spend, and we're going to get into why and how to develop this stuff too, because of the 3 teams I researched: SwimMac, North Baltimore, and Rockville Montgomery Swim Club. Shout out to those teams, where I had teammates who swam on those teams, and I asked who went through their development program. All 3 became NCAA champions individually. All 3 team champions. All 3 became top 50 swimmers in the world in their specialty. All 3 were Olympic trials semifinalists in high school. One of them was a finalist in high school. Made their international teams, junior teams, and won medals. I believe back then it was like the Youth Olympics or something. 2 of them made those teams. Conger is one of them, and he obviously, coming out of high school, won World University Games in the 200 back. So, and he's also the one who finaled, right, in the 100 back, I believe it was, at Olympic trials as a high schooler. So amazing programs that we studied to try and organize, take this and then organize it into what I wanted to do with this club team I was on. And that's how we were able to develop the athletes at a high level. Muscular strength, when they should be doing the type of strength gains. You can see down here it says age 14 to 15 is when peak strength gains occur. Let's see. Scroll up. Be nice. Gender considerations. Okay, here's the thing. This is probably the most important piece, at least to me. The windows of optimal trainability. When stamina and endurance training is the best. 5 S's, you can see it right there. Strength, speed, skill, suppleness, which is flexibility. They had to find a thesaurus to make that word. They said the 5 S's. We got to figure out how to make the 5th S. I bet suppleness means something else usually. But yeah, you can see the trailiness for suppleness in both genders is 6 to 10, right? So they're a lot more flexible. They're easier to be made into flexible athletes, and we're going to take advantage of that window with our stroke development. And honestly, this is where I get a lot of flack, and this is how I know people don't be knowing what they're talking about, especially on butterfly. So to all the haters, this is for you. I teach a lot of our butterflyers thumbs down, push the chest through, and we're entering wide. Because, like it says here, Swim Canada, the fastest rising medal winner at international competitions because they were developing their young athletes the right way to be great pros and international swimmers. At the young age, they are flexible, so you can take advantage of these awkward motions that you would not want a untrained teenage athlete getting into. But if you start them early enough getting into these positions safely, it's usable. So to everybody out there who's a hater, I want you to take a picture of this and understand. Look me in my eyes. You're wrong, and this is why I dominate you. Oh man, the hooper almost came out of me right there. I almost said something foul to y'all. Same way I would on a basketball court where y'all try to check me. Elbow to the face, dunk. Anyway, getting a little too live. All right, so specialization, we're not really going to look at that right now. So this was the big diagram that I said about that story with my old boss. He saw this and lost his shit and was hyped up, and it's like, yo, I gave it to you 3 years ago, man. See, and this is also the thing about, being elite, is you have to realize, like, a lot of people you look up to and people you trust, they ain't got the sauce. They holding you back, not necessarily because they try, but because of their own limited imagination, right? So we have active start. We're gonna get to the good stuff, and you can see how this kind of, let me just upload it, get it open. Almost fits directly with the long-term athletic development model. I'm gonna try and get them going back to back. Let me make sure I got this right. Okay, there we go. Picking my nose on the internet, Jesus. I didn't pick my nose, I scratched it, but that's what it looks like. So fundamentals, so we have ages 8 to 5, 6 to 7. I try to just break this down. I went halfway in the middle, so I went 6 to 9, right? Or you can go 5 to 7, right? Where they're learning the fundamentals. It depends, I guess, on what the next one is. Learn to train. So yeah. So this would be the encompassment of everything 9 and under. right? So relatively speaking, it would be 2 and 1, right? Yeah, 2 and 1, right? So this would be maybe your 2 days a week swimmers who are doing the BB content, just working on moving to the water, right? And this is your 3 days swimmers who maybe the first portion of them are learning how to train and go 50s on a minute, right? These intervals down here with the BB content. And then on your top group of the 3 days a week swimmer, they're starting to see some preliminary fundamental AA 10 to 12 content. You know, you have maybe your late bloomer 10-year-old kids who are kind of staying back in this 3-day-a-week group, or you have your on development pace 9-year-olds and the ones who are ahead 8-year-olds, right? They're trying to introduce the AA 10 to 12 content and train at this level, and then maybe every once in a while you're peppering in level 3 where they're seeing 100 trying to go. You put it on 2 minutes, but can they go under one? Wow, that was weird to did that. You put it on 2 minutes, but you're trying to see if they can go under this 140 right here, right? That's how I would do this when I would develop these kids. And like I said, we learned how to do this within a year, especially on the kicking. I think it says right here the kicking is 2 minutes. We would have these kids on 2 minutes, and it's like, hey, you need to go under 140, right? Because, you know, on here it says 2 minutes. All right, that's the interval for AAA time for 10 and under. The interval is 2 minutes, right? But we wanted our kids to be able to go under 140. And this is where, you know, coaches, once again, talking that trash about me teaching kids to kick from their knees. You're wrong again. Specifically, shout out to Owen. Owen, if you are seeing this, shout out to you. This kid, like, you know, this happens to all of them, but Owen specifically, like, it was a great moment because he was struggling to go under 2 minutes. I remember one day he showed up to practice and finally started using his knees. Overt. Like, it was probably too much knees now to be like, okay, that's too much now. Like, tone it down a little, make it a little bit smaller of a window. But he started going 147. You know, he's using the back of the lane, falling behind, can't make the interval, getting lapped. And the day he tries to do it, boom, 147. I think he was 10 at the time. And, you know, granted, we didn't have time to train it, which, you know, how to go from that to this and then training it within 8 months is what the course is going to be about. But, you know, if he had, you know, we're looking at a minimum of an A time for a 10-year-old, you know? I mean, a minimum of an A time for a 10-year-old. So, yeah, you know, it is what it is. Anyway, let's get back into the good stuff. This way. Okay, so, you know, this is our 9 and unders. Like I said, 1 to 3 sessions. There it is. So, right, we were doing 2 as the young kids, the, 4 to 7-year-olds, maybe 8 who are just learning the BB content, and then rising to 4 to 6 sessions. So, like I said, that would be your top group of your 3-day-a-week swimmers who are starting to introduce some of the AA content. And the thing about that is because of the intervals, right, which are, on a minute, they're going to be able to go fast and get a lot of rest. Because this is 100 on 2 minutes, right? They're going to be able to go fast, get a lot of rest, and basically safely practice going fast. You see what I'm saying? They're going to be able to safely practice going fast with good technique, right? They're mostly focused on the drills. And I don't know if it's in here. Where did I get that from? It might be in here, actually. No, it is in here, where they talk about the percentages of what type of sets and practices they should be doing. We should have seen it by now. Let me see if I can make sure I didn't skip that. Because that, to me, is a very important piece where they talk about the percentages of what type of training or the type of thing they should be doing. So the fundamentals, fun games out of the pool. There used to be, I don't know where I got that from. There's this thing that says like what percentage of their time in the pool. So I'm going to have to show you all that. And it's like 40% of these practices should be fun. Right now, the way that I would do it is we would go like a lot of fun in the beginning of the season and the off season. So say you have like 100 days, right? And 40% of your practices are supposed to be fun. You can take that hour and put 40% of the hours of that hour's time as your 40%, right? If you did it every day, that time is going to add up to 40%. We would go maybe like all whole practices fun, right? But we would bank it all on certain time. So we would get the same amount of time but the same amount of total time, right? Where instead of just adding it up in like 10 minutes at each practice, we would go the whole full hour and basically like bank all of our fun in certain portions of the season. And this is, like I said, the course where we were trying to flip the team or flip the group. That's how we would do it, and, we'd have, a whole fun practice, peppered in here based on how hard they're working, but I made them earn it. And, eventually, you get to the point where once everybody's competent with the drills, you can start having more fun, like to the 10 minutes in practice type scenario, right? But anyway, so let's see if it's here. It has to be in here. 4 to 6 sessions per week. No, this is the wrong one. Learn to train. I feel like this isn't right. We should have seen something else, a different diagram. Show sidebar. Yep. There's another one. Okay, so here's where we are. This is where I need us to go. Why isn't it changing? You see how it's skipping every 2 pages? You can't see that at the top. Come on. Give me page 25. Okay, you guys are gonna have to give me a second because it won't show. It's skipping every other page. I don't know how to get it to show the other page. Yeah, so dang, that means we missed a lot of stuff that they weren't including. Oh no, we did. That's weird. So it gave us all the other stuff, but didn't give us. Oh no, it is. Okay, I'm wrong. My bad, guys. It's right there. Is it? Venues, physical. Okay, so never mind. That page on the second one is the second page. Oh wow, that's really interesting. So it shows up different. So in the form that I have, you can see over here on the right where it says 24, 25. This is 24 right here. This is 25. So they put it all on one, which is kind of cool. Okay, so we have that answered. So we do have both of them over here, but let's see if it says, yeah, they don't have the percentages. That's weird. I wonder where I got that from though. Huh. It might be later on then. All right. And then we have our learn to train. So these are your 10 to 12-year-olds. So these are going to be your 5 days a week swimmers now, right? You see 4 to 6 sessions, an hour to an hour and a half. Time per week. Participation in other sport activities. Did it say that in this other one? Physical activity. High repetition, low intensity focus. No, it doesn't say. Right? You see here learning skills still. Fun, like I said. So like I use all this stuff, right? And so you think about this, how I was able to like flip groups around and, achieve at a high level. Like we went from, I think 2% to 11% AA times on the team, coming from, the younger age groups. Definitely the older age groups too, but that's another story for another time. But you can see, you take this and you combine it with them training their muscles, how it's easy to flip this stuff over if you are creative in your thought process of what you're implementing. Okay, I think this is where we're gonna move through because I'm gonna see if I can find that other thing. But yeah, at this point, right, they would have had that introduction to the AA, where the AA fundamental technique solutions, where they're learning more propulsive elements. So your high elbow catch, how to produce propulsion from the kick and the arms and butterfly. Whereas in the BB content, you're focused on positioning and time spent in the right positions, doing whatever shape or movement you should be doing. Right, it's timing oriented and fundamental oriented. Sorry about that. But yeah, then you get to your AAA content, which would be the back end of your 3-day, your fast back end of your 3 days a week, and your 5 days a week swimmers, 10 to 12, where we're finally going over the good stuff, the really getting down what they had an introduction to, which then makes the learning curve a little less steep if you had introduced it in the top group of the 3-day-a-week practicers. But they're actually aggressively applying it, and it's not so much learning as much as it is like calling a play, like blue 7-9 Mike back cut linebacker show blitz, whatever, right? Hey, we're going L skull for blah, 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 blah. Then from there, we're transitioning into that to flutter breast, make sure the head stays up, and then we're going to make sure we're adding in the shoot. And then we're going into 100 breaststroke swim on 100 breaststroke swim on 2 minutes, right? Right there, right? And that's how we end up going these times, right? And because we know the technique works faster than what it says, that's where we're going to get those AA times for the 12 and unders. So you can see how this stuff all fits together. I still want to, where is it? There is a document that says, it has to be in here. Yeah, they go through all of them, compete to win. So this would be like your college or your national group. And, this stuff, like, it doesn't give you any information. Same thing with the American development model. You get to this top group, it really doesn't tell you anything. 13, 14 is your last one. 115, we did 100s freestyle and practice at UT on 110. So it's not too far off. Here, it doesn't really tell you anything, right? There is no, but I had this from college, right? So I have all the levels. And we were implementing them, and we were killing it. Let's see if I can find this thing where it talks about with a time. Glossary. Man, I really wish I knew where it was. Because there is a document, I don't know where I read it, because it clearly wasn't here, where they talk about the time window you should be spending in each one. Like actual time. Like how long you should be doing fun stuff in practice for each age group. I mean, I wrote it down, and we're going to look at that next, but it's just interesting. I thought it was this one. Let's see. Is it here? Development stage. Oh, it's not here. It didn't say fun anywhere on here. Yeah, so dang. Okay. All right, let me open this up. I'm kind of running over now. Let's see, I think it's this one. Oh, no, it's not this one. Okay. All right, here we go, guys. All right. So I can't remember what diagram I got this from, but maybe I don't know where it's from. Anyway, so this is Reykli Original. So this stuff is definitely going to be in our course. So you're going to get a little sneak peek right here. But you can see here, right, addressing the different training need at different age groups. This relates to all intervals, long-term performance, long-term stroke development, how all these things work together with age groups, practice group objectives, and optimal windows of trainability. Additionally, how these things synchronize together to address the growth maturation of athletes, blah, 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 blah. Right, so you can see it's organized, active start, down, skill development. So this would be like your BB, fundamental or beginner. Here you're going to have your BB fundamentals, but also a little bit of introduction of your BB beginner, but also the introduction of your advanced fundamental AA content, right? 10 to 12. And then here you'd see 10 to 12. And then here we get into our advanced. And then here we would be national level content for 16 plus. And these are going to be like when you have your kids in like your national development group or your national group or college. I'd say advanced also works for college, but we have learned that, no, it works for college. But we have learned through, developing the right drills that it applies to the motor skill range of 13-year-olds, right? So anyway, introduction to water, we have everything kind of how UC Swimming has their own thing. We went through and kind of through testing it with athletes, like what's the fastest way that they can learn the fastest. And that's kind of what we wrote about here. But you can see training style. A lot of fun, a lot of skill work. I gotta make sure I don't give away too much. So I gotta kind of go back here. Let's see, zoom out. What the heck? Zoom out. Oh no, it's kind of cool. So I don't know when I made this up. So this would have been after I left my first team that I kind of really sat down and ironed it out. Everything I wanted to do. But I'd say mentally I was implementing this. I just didn't have it written down. Okay. So, I'll show y'all this one. This is kind of cool. So over here, you guys can see it says active start, right? So baseline skills to get across the pool. So this is like your 2-day-a-week swimmers, freestyle, kind of the base things like as a coach you're looking for. Right now, obviously we have drills for all this stuff, but just as a coach, what you're looking for, all this stuff. So here you have your 3-day-a-week swimmers, 2 to 4, right? Speed, skills, flexibility, because I think we didn't see it in that one document we were looking at, but speed is one of the training skills in here, right? 9 and under. I think the window is 6 to 7 for boys and 7 to 8 for girls. But that's why I just say 9 and under, right? Just give them the same thing, right? It's not like they use it and they're not going to get better. You can see I broke it down. Like I said, I was implementing this stuff mentally. Beginning ages, so your low end of your 3 days a week, 60% skills, 10% swimming, 30% fun, still skill dripping. Then we start going into competition. So now we want them to be getting into like meets every once in a while. 55% skills, 25% swimming, 20 fun. So like I said, they're starting to introduce your fundamental AA content. You're introducing more yards, so they're seeing those hundreds every once in a while where they're, can they go, even though it's on 2 minutes, can they get under 140? And then, they're still seeing fun, they're 9 and unders. And then this is, like I said, all this stuff, some of this stuff is, brand new stuff, straight from the mind of Dax, like the athlete CEO. Ideally, when I think about swimming under Eddie or even swimming in high school, like a lot of our coaches, like they just let us go warm up, right? And ideally, you want to be, gradually empowering your athletes to take care of themselves in their own training. So that's what this athlete CEO is, right? Where the coach cares more than the athlete does, but you still want the athletes, showing their leadership skills, showing their accountability in practice, keeping up with intervals, etc. You can see we'll learn fundamental skills that lead to long-term success. So this is pretty much what I would call what's taught from 18 and under normally, right? Your vertical forearm, your 6-beat kick, distance per stroke. This is all the stuff. So if this is what you're teaching your 18-year-olds, you're about to get left behind, because ideally, motor skill wise, they are capable of learning this, beginning to learn this on the back end of 9 and 10, but definitely by 10, right? So you can see down here, we have all the motor skill, agility, balance, coordination, RJT, blah, 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 blah. Right, and this is where I say the thing about, the motor skill development, like just basic motor skill development, because if you can get them at 9 before they move up to their 5-week practice, where they're developing those motor skills, it's going to be a lot easier for them to have the base level of athleticism to begin the training we want to see, where they're actually doing like a more sports-based dry land by other sport participation, either now too, because they have 2 days where they're not in the water, or in the next level, the 5 days a week, where they're actually going to be running kind of a supplementary multi-sport participation development. Now, luckily, I did multi-sport participation at a high level. I was our team's record holder in track. I was our best or second best player on basketball in middle school. In high school, I was the second or the best in basketball. And not kind of remembering, but kind of right now. In remembering those things, I've already written all this stuff down. I remember like what muscles feeling like sore, right? And if they're sore, right, that means they're working, which means they're going to come back stronger. And we want to, all these other sports that develop these different muscle groups, we want to put that into our dry land. So our dry land needs to be getting us the same gains that they would be getting from these other sports. Introducing a reinforce a positive feedback loop. So if any of you, if I've ever coached your kid, you probably heard me talking about positive feedback loops a lot. Self-confidence, concentration skills, teamwork, personal interaction skills. That's one parents know I'm big on. Introduce athlete-driven ownership. Right, development goals, freestyle, DPS. So some of y'all will recognize this in our fundamental BB content. Not fundamental, fundamental AA content for 10 to 12, and then our beginner BB content. You can see this stuff, right? Like, I'm not playing. It's very organized. Like I said, I do things to win. So we're gonna be detailed. We're gonna be intentional. We're gonna get after it. Backstroke, like I said, we're limiting drag. That would be getting the button to hips flat, keeping the kick tight, and then making sure our pull line is correct. All right, so if the pull is traveling in a straight line back, that means we're only traveling a straight line forwards. So all these tools, everything I'm saying, like we've, conceptualized it and then practice it at a high level. And then our last one, let me think about how much of this I want to show. Okay. So you can see 10 to 12, right? I talked about this. You see tier 2 and tier 3 skills. So this would be like your late bloomer kids who are 10, might be still going 3 days a week, but then you're into your tier 3. Back then it was called tier 3. Now it's called the fundamental AA 10 to 12 content. But even then, like DPS, it's just a timing issue when we're teaching it in the beginner BB content. It becomes a more race applicable solution in our fundamental AA content, right? So it moves from kind of just like a timing and position this at this time and time these things together in our beginner content to how can we do this to create propulsion and race hard, right? While meeting the training demands we need. So we also have strength exercises and resistance strength training mechanics. So resistance strength training mechanics is just putting the body in the right place, right? So we can create force. Because ideally, like I said, when you do this technique stuff right, it's like lifting weights in the water. So we want to make sure we're doing this stuff because lifting weights is called resistance training. So we want to have our strokes being trained as if they were resistance training, right? We want to be building strength for our strokes. Right, we're moving, stroke begins. So in the fundamentals, right, it's about cutting through the water being efficiency. Now we're moving towards racing mechanics versus efficiency. So we're going to sacrifice some of that efficiency so we can start racing faster. We'll begin to add blah, 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 blah. Base level racing skills. So, right, flip turns, dives, making sure you're having the right angle and approach to the surface. Right, big meets. December, and then your big meet at the end. Body weights. So at the time, I'd say when we were doing this, our 10 to 12-year-olds, they were running a light version of what our 13, 14-year-olds were running. The 13 and 14-year-olds were that island of broken toys I was talking about who became the chosen ones. So with them, these kids, like our whole dryland program was around, like I said, the gains that you would get in sports, right? And we talked about how important that was to like when I was a kid where because our technique wasn't as good, because we were stronger, we were still getting the same time standards, even though we were only getting 40% of that strength gain. So that's what this is developed of. Our 9 and our 10 and unders were, well, I guess it was 10-year-olds. We didn't really have any. It was 9. There was a few 9-year-olds, but everything they did was about proper form, right? We ain't trying to just out here do this. We're trying to get 100% of gain. So if you have to do less with great form, you're gonna get 100% of this less, right? We're, like I said, every movement of every technique of every stroke of every yard, we are maximizing development. Preparing kids for the next level. Like that's what a lot of this is. It's getting them ready for the next level, right? Because like I said, I guess we haven't gone over that, but I'll show you a quick smidget of those teams. I think that's it for this. Yeah. You know what? I'll show you a quick little. You'll get a quick little. You're gonna take a screenshot of this. You can see on all this, right? You can see it down here. Power, avoid negative propulsion. Power, avoid negative propulsion. Power, avoid negative propulsion. Right. So everything at that level, we're about, yeah, we're going to maybe make a little bit more drag mathematically, but we just want to make sure we're not fighting against ourselves and pushing ourselves backwards as we get stronger in the water. Okay, let me find this. Where is it? I should have it open. All right, so this is from my notes for today. But here you can see North Baltimore. Austin Surhoff, I interviewed him. This is how good of a club they were. Right, dominant force. He came up in their program. Eric Freeland and Jack Conger came up in RMC's program. And then I was there at SWIMAC and got to see firsthand like how they were developing their program. And a big thing is they were not big on yards, right? And that's, you can see kind of how that also filters into, let me go back over here. Filters into the fun and the technique versus the training when I was showing those percentages, right? Of how you should spend your time. And, SWIMAC, one of the most dominant teams ever. And then during 08, 12, and 16 trials, they had 69 total out of all three teams, high school athletes qualifying. 9 semifinals only races. So if you include the kids who advanced on, 22 semifinals races, 13 finals races. Okay? Of high schoolers. Right? So, talking to them about and how their training was organized by age groups, looking at the Canadian development model, looking at the ADM and applying what I had learned and what is now our Reykli content, you can see how it is very easy to develop athletes. I always tell kids, being fast is easy. The hard part and the working hard part is finding the right information, and we got that. If you're willing to work hard, like in the pool and train, like once you have the information, like the hard part's done. You just got to do the thing that you always do now. So beautiful thing. But yeah, you can very easily see how our, and I've, twice have done the flipping a practice group. Once, the first time I did it was the first time I really aggressively, like I said, I was trying to coach around the coach above me's bad habits and make sure that these kids were equipped. And like I said, the training the muscles thing, like that's a big piece of this. Like if they're training their muscles, they can do 50s. Like I found out the hard way. I couldn't even go 25, despite being a well-trained, world-class 38th in the world ranked athlete, NCAA champion. If I get my muscles in the right place, I can get stronger and train those muscles, right? So no matter what bad stuff they were going to get, if I could teach them how to use their muscles the right way when they moved up, it's going to be very hard to mess them up. And let me see. I think that is it. Double check. Higher level skills. Went through that. Went through the variables. Yep. So that's it, guys. Like that's how it's done. So, I'm going to clip this up, get those out on the gram, but that's, how you develop them. You got your 3 major variables, athletic based strength, technique, which is cutting through the water, but more specifically, like with doing that, positioning themselves to gain access to their strength. Let me just read off the list so I don't miss anything. Optimizing every movement per every stroke per every yard. So optimizing all the variables in your training so that when yardage happens at that 10 to 12 range, they're ready to explode and go. And organizing all this stuff around the age groups, their needs, their mental needs, their psychological needs, their emotional needs, their physical motor skill development and limitations and abilities. And that's how we did it, fine tooth comb, check all the boxes, and then you add the technique onto it. You can flip a practice group from AA or from B times to AA, AAA times. And that's what our course is going to be about. Yeah. Thanks for hanging with us today.